I've never told this story to anyone except my brother. Not my ex-wife, not my friends, nobody. Because I know what it sounds like. I know exactly how crazy it sounds. But I also know what I saw. I've been fishing that same lake for almost 20 years now. It's about a mile from my cabin. This small body of water that most tourists don't even know exists. That morning was like any other. September, just before dawn. The time when the bass are most active. I remember the date clearly. September 14th, because it was my father's birthday. He'd been gone 5 years by then, but I still went fishing on his birthday. Kind of my way of remembering him, I guess. I was in my usual spot. Small aluminum boat, just me and my tackle box, about 30 yards from the eastern shore. The moon was still up, and there was that deep silence you only get in those moments before sunrise. No wind, no birds yet, just the occasional ripple when a fish would touch the surface. I had just cast my line when I noticed something odd about the water. At first I thought it was the way the moonlight was hitting it, playing tricks on my eyes. But then I realized the water around my boat was vibrating. Not like ripples from wind, but almost like something was making the molecules themselves shake. I could feel it through the hull of my boat. A low, steady vibration. My first thought was an earthquake. We don't get many in Minnesota, but it happens. But nothing else was moving. The trees on the shore were perfectly still, and there was this pressure, like when a storm is coming, and you feel it in your sinuses, but stronger, more focused. That's when my phone died. Just shut off completely. My watch too, an old digital Casio, nothing fancy. Later I'd find out it was stuck at 5:17 a.m. I remember checking it, tapping the face, thinking the battery had died. But that watch had been reliable for years. The vibration in the water was getting more intense, and I started to reel in my line thinking, maybe I should head back to shore. That's when I noticed the deer. There's a small clearing on the north bank where deer often come down to drink in the early morning. This was a young doe, slender, alert, but she wasn't drinking. She was just standing there, rigid, her head tilted up toward the sky. Completely unnatural posture. In all my years watching wildlife, I'd never seen a deer stand like that. I followed her gaze upward, but I didn't see anything at first. Just the fading stars, the moon, the dark blue of early dawn. Then the air changed. I know that doesn't make sense, but it's the only way I can describe it. Like the space above the lake folded somehow. The stars behind it seemed to distort, like looking through the heat waves above hot asphalt. But it wasn't heat. It was something else. The vibration in the water intensified, and my boat started to rock slightly. Not from waves, there weren't any waves, but from the vibration itself. I gripped the sides of the boat, and I remember my fingertips went numb. A tingling sensation that started in my hands and worked its way up my arms. That's when I saw it. Or rather, that's when I saw the absence of it. A perfect darkness, oval-shaped, maybe 30 feet across, hovering about 50 feet above the center of the lake. Not like a black object blocking the stars, more like a hole in reality itself, where the stars and early dawn light simply couldn't penetrate. I couldn't move. I don't mean I was paralyzed with fear, though I was definitely afraid. I mean I physically could not move my body. It was like every muscle had locked up. I could breathe. I could blink. I could move my eyes. But that was it. The dark oval began to pulse, rhythmically, like a heartbeat, and with each pulse the vibration in the water synchronized. The air felt electric, like right before lightning strikes, but no storm, no thunder. My attention was drawn back to the deer on the shoreline. She was still frozen in that same unnatural position, head tilted up. But now she was rising, slowly, steadily, lifting straight up from the ground. No struggle, no movement of her legs, just a smooth ascent, as if she were being pulled up by invisible wires. I tried to scream. I really did. But no sound came out. My voice was gone, just like my ability to move. I could only watch as the deer rose higher, maybe 15 feet off the ground now, still in that rigid posture. As she reached about 30 feet up, she began to move laterally, drifting over the water toward the dark oval. The movement was so smooth, so controlled, nothing like an animal falling or jumping. It was deliberate, directed. The deer continued to rise, now directly beneath the oval darkness. And then, she simply disappeared into it. Not like she entered a solid object, more like she was absorbed. One moment she was there, the next she wasn't. The oval pulsed one final time, more intensely than before. The vibration in the water peaked, and I felt pressure in my ears like a rapid altitude change. Then, in an instant, it was gone. Not like it flew away or moved. It was just no longer there. The moment it vanished, I could move again. I nearly fell out of my boat, my muscles releasing all at once. I was gasping, heart hammering in my chest, hands shaking uncontrollably. The lake was completely still now, the vibration gone. I grabbed the oars and rowed back to shore faster than I ever had before. My phone was still dead. I remember sitting in my truck for maybe 20 minutes before I could stop shaking enough to drive. When I got back to my cabin, the power was out. Digital clocks flashing. But the strange thing was, when my phone finally turned back on by itself, it was nearly 7:30 a.m. Somehow almost 2 hours had passed, but in my mind, the entire experience had lasted maybe 10 minutes. I told myself all the logical explanations. Ball lightning, some kind of natural gas release from the lake bottom, a mini seizure that affected my perception. I spent weeks researching natural phenomena that could explain what I saw. But I know what I saw. And I know that deer didn't swim away or run into the forest. That was 3 months ago. I haven't been fishing since. I tell people it's because of work, or the cold weather, or whatever excuse seems believable. But the truth is, I can't bring myself to go back to that lake. And sometimes when I close my eyes at night, I still see that perfect darkness, pulsing above the water, waiting. After that morning at the lake, I tried to go back to normal. I really did. Went to work, fixed things around the cabin, called my son on Sundays like always. But something had changed in me. I'd find myself zoning out in the middle of conversations, my mind drifting back to that oval darkness, to the deer rising into the air. My foreman had to snap me out of it twice while I was operating heavy machinery. That's when I knew I needed to get a grip. I started keeping a journal. Not something I'd ever done before. I'm not that type of guy. But I needed to get it all down, every detail I could remember before my mind started playing tricks on me. I wrote about the vibration in the water, the way time seemed to skip forward, the unnatural stillness of the deer before it was taken. The more I wrote, the more I remembered. Little details that hadn't registered in the moment, like how the air had smelled different, almost metallic, how the usual morning sounds of the forest had completely stopped. And something else, something I hadn't consciously noticed until I was writing it all down. There had been a pattern to the pulsing of that dark oval. Not random. 3 quick pulses, then a longer one. Over and over. Like some kind of signal or code. About 2 weeks after it happened, I started having the dreams. Always the same. I'm in my boat, but the lake isn't water anymore. It's like black glass. Perfectly still, reflecting the stars. And I'm not alone in the boat. I can feel something sitting behind me. I never turn around, I never see what it is. But I know it's there, watching me, waiting for me to look. I always wake up just as I'm about to turn my head. I stopped sleeping much after that. Then came the nosebleeds. Never had them before in my life, then suddenly they're happening 3-4 times a week. Always at night, always waking me from a deep sleep. And the headaches. Right behind my eyes, like someone driving a nail through my skull. The doctor found nothing wrong, suggested it might be stress. Gave me some pills that didn't help. One night, about a month after the lake, I was sitting on my porch. Couldn't sleep as usual. It was around 2 a.m., dead quiet, just me and a glass of whiskey. That's when I noticed the scar. I don't know how I hadn't seen it before. Just below my hairline on the back of my neck. Small, maybe half an inch long. Perfectly straight like a surgical cut. No memory of getting it, no pain. Just there, like it had always been part of me. I went inside and checked old photos. A fishing trip from last summer. My brother had snapped a picture of me from behind, hauling in a walleye. My neck was clearly visible. No scar. That night I drank until I passed out. The next day I finally worked up the courage to go back to the lake. Not to fish, just to look, to make sure it was still just a lake. I parked at the access road and walked down to the shore, my heart pounding the whole time. Everything looked normal. Just water, trees, sky. No sign that anything unusual had ever happened there. I was about to leave when I noticed something on the shore, near where the deer had been standing. I walked over to investigate. It was a patch of ground, maybe 3 feet in diameter, where nothing was growing. No grass, no weeds, just bare earth. And it was perfect. A perfect circle. The edge so clean it looked like someone had used a compass to draw it. I kneeled down to touch it. The soil felt wrong, dry, almost powdery, when the ground around it was still damp from recent rain. That's when I noticed the tracks. Deer tracks, leading up to the bare circle, then stopping. None leading away. I took some of the soil in a plastic bag. Don't know why. Just felt like I needed proof. Something tangible to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. On the drive home, my radio started acting up. Stations shifting on their own, voices cutting in and out. Then suddenly, clear as day, I heard 3 distinct tones, then a longer one. 3 quick, 1 long. The exact pattern I'd written about in my journal. My blood went cold. I nearly drove off the road. The radio went back to normal after that. Just country music, like nothing had happened. But I knew. Whatever had been out there on the lake, it wasn't done with me. That night I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my brother Jim. He's the practical one in the family. Accountant in Minneapolis, everything in his life neat and organized. I didn't tell him the whole story. Just that I'd seen something strange while fishing and it was bothering me. Asked if he'd come up for the weekend. He arrived Friday evening. We grilled steaks, drank beers. Normal brother stuff. I was starting to feel better, more grounded. Then Jim noticed the scar on my neck. "When did you get that?" he asked. I made up something about hitting my head on a cabinet door. He seemed to buy it. After dinner, sitting around the fire pit, Jim started telling me about weird stuff happening in the news. Power outages across the county. No explanation from the utility company. Animals acting strange. A herd of cattle found standing in a perfect circle in a field about 30 miles from my cabin. Birds flying into windows. Disoriented. I hadn't heard any of this. I've never been one for news or social media. But as Jim talked, I felt that same cold dread from the lake creeping back into my chest. There was even a report, Jim said, lowering his voice like someone might be listening, of a hunter finding a deer carcass in the woods. Said it had been dissected somehow. Organs removed. No blood. Game warden said it must have been coyotes. But this guy swears no animal did that. I didn't sleep at all that night. Kept thinking about the deer rising into that darkness. And for the first time I wondered, what if it hadn't just been taken? What if they'd brought it back? Jim left Sunday afternoon. As he was getting into his car, he hesitated, then turned to me. "Mike," he said, "you'd tell me if something was really wrong, right?" I nodded, forced a smile. "Yeah, of course, I'm fine. Just needed some company." He drove away. I watched until his taillights disappeared down the road. That night I dreamt of the lake again. But this time, when I felt the presence behind me in the boat, I turned around. I wish to God I hadn't. I woke up screaming. Sheets soaked with sweat, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The dream, what I'd seen when I turned around in the boat, it was already fading, slipping away like water through my fingers. But the feeling remained. Pure terror. The kind that reaches down into the most primitive part of your brain and takes hold. I stumbled to the bathroom, splashed water on my face. In the mirror, I looked like hell. Bloodshot eyes, skin pale and clammy. The scar on my neck seemed more prominent somehow. Redder. As I stared at my reflection, a single drop of blood fell from my nose, landing in the white porcelain sink. Bright red against white. Like a warning. That day, I called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years. I couldn't face people. Couldn't trust myself to function normally. Instead, I went back to the lake. I don't know why. It was like being pulled by an invisible thread. This time, I brought a camera. An old Polaroid my dad had left me. I wanted evidence. Something tangible I could look at later to prove to myself I wasn't imagining things. The circle of dead earth was still there, exactly as I'd left it. I took several photos, from different angles. As I was taking the last shot, I noticed something in the viewfinder that I hadn't seen with my naked eye. About 20 yards from the dead circle, partially hidden by underbrush, was another one, identical in size and appearance. I pushed through the brush to reach it, just like the first, perfectly circular, the soil dry and lifeless. But this one had something the other didn't. In the center, pressed into the earth, was a mark, a symbol of some kind, 3 curved lines intersecting, forming something that wasn't quite a triangle, wasn't quite a circle. It looked deliberate, intentional. like a signature left behind. I took photos of that too, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the camera. As the Polaroids developed in my pocket, I continued exploring the shoreline. By the time I'd walked the perimeter of the lake, I'd found 5 more circles, each with the same symbol pressed into the earth. Back in my truck, I laid out the photos on the seat beside me. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In each photo in the background, barely visible among the trees, was a dark shape, indistinct, blurry, but unmistakably there. And it wasn't a tree or a shadow. It was something watching me. I drove straight home, locked all the doors, and closed all the blinds. For the first time since my divorce, I took my hunting rifle out of the gun safe, loaded it, kept it next to me as I sat at the kitchen table staring at those photographs. As night fell, the power went out. Not just in my cabin, but everywhere I could see. No lights from the distant town, no glow from the highway, just complete darkness. I lit candles, tried to stay calm, told myself it was just a regular power outage, coincidence, nothing to do with the circles or the symbol or the shapes in my photos. Then my truck's alarm started going off outside, shrill, insistent. I grabbed my rifle, went to the window, carefully pulled back the curtain an inch. The truck's lights were flashing, but there was no one near it. No sign of anyone trying to break in. I steeled myself, went to the front door, stood there for a long moment, rifle in hand, trying to work up the courage to step outside. Finally, I opened the door. The night air hit me like a wall, cold, and with that same metallic smell I'd noticed at the lake. My truck was about 30 yards from the cabin. I could see it clearly in the moonlight, lights still flashing rhythmically. 3 quick, 1 long. The pattern again. I started walking toward it, rifle raised. Each step felt like moving through molasses, that same heaviness I'd felt in the boat, like my limbs weren't fully under my control. About halfway to the truck, I noticed the silence. My alarm was still visually flashing, but I couldn't hear it anymore. Couldn't hear anything. Not the wind in the trees, not my footsteps on the gravel. Nothing. Then I felt it. That vibration. Not in water this time, but in the air around me, in the ground beneath my feet. A rhythmic pulsing that seemed to pass through my body, making my vision blur. I looked up. Above my truck, maybe 50 feet in the air, was that same oval darkness. A perfect absence of stars and moonlight. And it was growing, expanding, becoming deeper somehow. My truck's lights were dimming, power draining away. I tried to turn, to run back to the cabin, but my body wouldn't respond. I was frozen again, just like at the lake. Could only stand there watching as the darkness pulsed and grew. That's when I saw the shapes around my truck. 3 of them, moving with an odd fluidity, like they weren't walking so much as gliding. I couldn't make out details. They were just darker patches against the night, but they were there, and they were moving toward me. As they approached, the vibration intensified. My vision started to fragment, breaking apart like a shattered mirror. I could feel something warm running from my nose, my ears. Blood. The last thing I remember clearly is looking down at my rifle, still clutched in my hands but now bent, twisted, as if it had been made of wax and left in the sun. The metal barrel was warped into an impossible shape, the same symbol I'd seen pressed into the earth. The rest comes in flashes, being lifted, weightless. A light so bright, it felt like it was burning through my eyelids, cold metal against my back. Voices without sound, somehow inside my head rather than entering through my ears. Words I couldn't understand but somehow knew were questions. And faces, not human, not even close to human, but not alien in the way movies show them. Nothing so simple, so comprehensible. These were wrong, like something built from stolen pieces, assembled without understanding what the pieces were for. Eyes too many, too few, too large, too small, all at once. Proportions that shifted as I looked at them, never settling into anything my brain could process. I remember screaming, or trying to. No sound came out, but they seemed to recoil anyway, as if my terror was a physical thing they could feel. Then nothing, just darkness. I woke up in my bed, morning light streaming through the windows. My rifle was back in its safe, unloaded, completely normal. No twisted metal, no impossible symbol. The power was back on. Everything looked ordinary, except for the mud. It was caked on my boots, my clothes, which were neatly folded on a chair beside the bed, not strewn about in panic as I would have left them. And it wasn't mud from around my cabin. It was that same powdery gray soil from the dead circles by the lake, and there was something in my hand, clutched so tightly my fingers had cramped around it. A small object, smooth and cool to the touch. Not metal, not stone, not plastic. Something else entirely. A disc, about the size of a quarter, and etched into its surface the same 3 curved line symbol. Proof. Finally, something tangible. Something I couldn't dismiss as a dream or hallucination. I wish I'd never found it. That disc changed everything. Holding it in my hand, feeling its impossible weight, too heavy for its size, like it was made of something denser than anything on Earth, I couldn't deny what was happening anymore. Couldn't hide behind explanations of stress or hallucinations or coincidence. For 3 days, I didn't let it out of my sight. Kept it in my pocket during the day, under my pillow at night. I was afraid to show it to anyone, afraid they'd take it from me. But I was more afraid of what it meant, what it represented. I searched online for the symbol, spending hours scrolling through websites about ancient cultures, occult symbols, even corporate logos. Nothing matched. The closest I found was in a book about theoretical physics, a diagram representing some concept about intersecting dimensions that I couldn't begin to understand. On the 4th day, I noticed something new about the disk. It was warm. Not room temperature like it had been, but warm, like it had been sitting in the sun. Except it hadn't. It had been in my pocket all morning. As the day progressed, it got warmer. By evening, it was hot to the touch, almost uncomfortable to hold. And it was humming. Not a sound exactly, more like a vibration at a frequency just below hearing. I could feel it through my fingertips, up my arm, resonating in my teeth. That night the dreams changed. I wasn't in the boat anymore. I was in a vast space, dimensions impossible to judge. No walls, no ceiling, no floor, yet I was standing on something. Around me were the beings I'd glimpsed outside my cabin, still indistinct, still wrong in ways my mind couldn't process, but they were communicating with me. Not in words or images, but in concepts that bloomed directly in my consciousness. They showed me things. The lake, but not as it is now. The lake as it was thousands of years ago. Then the lake as it will be, thousands of years in the future. They showed me patterns, in water currents, in migration routes, in stars. Patterns that meant nothing to me, but clearly meant everything to them. And they showed me the deer. Not just the one I'd seen taken, but dozens, hundreds, over many years. Taken, studied, returned, sometimes alive, sometimes not. They showed me the others too. People. Drivers on dark highways, hikers on remote trails, fishermen on quiet lakes. Taken, studied, returned, most with no memory of what happened. But some, like me, remembered pieces. And some of those broke from the weight of those memories. I woke up with a certainty. The disc was calling them back. I threw it in the lake that morning, drove out at dawn, walked to the end of the old dock and hurled it as far as I could. Watched it arc through the air, catch the early light, and disappear beneath the surface with barely a splash. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. No dreams, no nosebleeds, no power outages. The scar on my neck began to fade. I started to sleep through the night again, started to think maybe it was over, that by getting rid of the disc, I'd somehow broken the connection. Then came the call from Jim. His voice tight, controlled in that way people get when they're trying very hard not to sound afraid. "Mike," he said, "I need you to check the news, right now." I pulled up the local news site on my phone. The headline was about a mass fish die-off at the lake. Thousands of fish, all species, washing up on shore overnight. No obvious cause. Environmental scientists baffled. But that wasn't what Jim was calling about. "Scroll down," he said. The other story. 3 missing persons reports in the county, all in the last 36 hours. A teenage girl walking home from a friend's house, an elderly man who'd gone out to check his mail, a state park ranger on a routine patrol, all vanished without a trace. "They're saying it might be a serial killer," Jim said. "But I keep thinking about what you saw, the thing with the deer." I didn't tell him he was right. Didn't tell him about the disc or the dreams or what I now understood. Just told him to stay away from lakes and open spaces for a while, to stay inside after dark. That night I packed a bag, clothes, some food, my dad's old revolver. I didn't know where I was going, just that I couldn't stay. As I was throwing the bag in my truck, I noticed a sheriff's car coming down my road, moving slow, spotlight sweeping the trees. I ducked back inside, watched through the window as the car pulled into my drive. 2 deputies got out, alert, hands near their weapons. They knocked on my door. I didn't answer. "Mr. Harmon," one called out. "Mike Harmon, we need to ask you some questions." I remained silent, heart pounding. They tried the door, found it locked, spoke into their radios. I caught fragments. "Location confirmed. Approach with caution. Potentially dangerous." They were looking for me, connecting me to the disappearances somehow. Maybe someone had seen me at the lake, throwing the disc in. Maybe they'd found something else, some evidence I'd left behind without realizing. They left after about 20 minutes, but I knew they'd be back. With more officers, probably a warrant. I couldn't run now, couldn't just drive away. They'd find me, arrest me, blame me for what had happened to those people. So I'm recording this instead, getting it all down, the whole truth, for whoever finds it. Maybe it'll help you understand. Maybe it'll help you prepare, because they're coming back. Not the police, the others. I can feel it. That same pressure in my sinuses, that same metallic taste in the air. The vibration is starting again, building slowly. My phone stopped working an hour ago. The lights are flickering. They're coming back and they're angry. The disc wasn't a gift, it was a tracker, a beacon. By throwing it in the lake, I didn't get rid of it. I activated it somehow, called more of them. And now people are disappearing, not just wildlife. I'm going to hide this recording where I think it'll be found eventually. I'd run, but there's nowhere to go that they won't find me. And maybe I need to be here. Maybe I can talk to them again, make them understand they're causing harm, or at least learn why they're here, what they want from us, from this place. I know how this sounds. I know what you're thinking as you listen to this. This guy is crazy, dangerous, delusional, probably responsible for those missing people himself. I might have thought the same once, but I know what I saw. And right now, outside my window over the lake in the distance, I can see it again. That perfect oval of darkness, growing larger, coming closer. If you're hearing this, and if the same thing ever happens to you, a strange light, missing time, unexplained scars, don't keep it to yourself like I did. Don't try to understand it alone. Tell someone. Tell everyone. And whatever you do, if you find something that doesn't belong in this world, don't touch it. Don't keep it. Don't throw it away. Just leave it exactly where it is and run. The vibration is in the walls now. My hands are going numb. They're almost here. I know what I saw, and God help me, I'm about to see it again. If you believe my story, hit subscribe and share your own unexplained encounters in the comments. There are things in this world beyond our understanding, and I'm not the only one who's seen them.